Welcome back to In Pursuit 360. Today, we're going to be talking about, do you still want to be a police officer in the times that we're in? So it's mid-July. We've got everything going on with, the George Floyd case and the case down in Atlanta and all that. So what does that mean if you want a career in law enforcement? How's that going to affect you? We're going to get into it. All right, so here we go. We're going to get into this. Not trying to be biased in any way, not trying to get too far deep into the politics, but in this situation with what's going on in the world right now, you can't help but talk about some of the politics that are involved in what's happening today with law enforcement. So, if you want to be a police officer, nothing's going to stop you. Even the things that are going on today, if you feel that call to serve, then you're going to answer that call. The question then becomes, do you really want to stick with a big city? Because they're really under a lot of fire right now. Or do you want to go smaller agency, maybe a little further out, where you're not going to have to deal with that kind of stuff as much? So let's talk about, they're talking about defunding the police or reforming, that kind of thing. These are all like just political keywords, if you will. New York City talked about they're going to cut the New York police budget by what is it, $1 billion or $1 million, or I think it was $1 billion. There's no way that's going to happen. And in response to that, based on the political climate up there right now, 300 New York police officers in an 11-hour time frame either resigned or filed for early retirement, and they're out. That's 300 openings right there if you're interested. It's sad that it happened that way, and why are they doing this? Well, let's look at Atlanta. They had that shooting in the Wendy's parking lot, which it's a tragedy that anybody ever dies. But you're going to find out that based on Georgia law and everything that happened in that case, those officers are going to end up being cleared. But because of the political climate and wanting to try to reduce the amount of damage done by riots or these groups that are out there destroying stuff, they just immediately fired the officer. I mean, immediately. Didn't put him on administrative leave, didn't do anything. They fired him and charged him without even looking into the case. So Atlanta police ended up having a serious case of what they call blue flu. A lot of the officers just started calling out. They weren't going to deal with it. So their way of kind of protesting what was done and how it was handled, they just started calling out of work. Buffalo was another case. They had the protester that the special operations team member, the guy wouldn't move and he kept approaching, and he gave him a shove, and it was the older guy that fell backwards and hit his head. Immediately was fired. Why? Because of the political climate. And what happened? That special operations team all turned in their cell phones and their gear and said, that's it, we're done. Have at it, good luck, right? So these things are going on right now. These are all politically motivated, right? Everybody's trying to look good. Everybody's trying to appease the protesters or the rioters. Not that there aren't some things that need to be changed in law enforcement, but they're looking at the wrong things. And I've touched on this briefly. I mean, you want to talk about reform? Let's talk about the training's already there. Training's good. So there is not an academy in the United States that I have ever heard of that actually will teach you to put your knee in another person's neck. It's not taught. It's not taught that way. There are very specific ways that are taught in how to handle people. That guy in Minneapolis screwed up. He did the wrong thing. He did not respond the right way. He was acting out of whatever it was that he was acting out of, whether it be, that he was just malicious. He had a relationship with George Floyd already. They used to bounce at a bar together, and they didn't like each other. So who knows if it was animosity from that. I don't know what was in his mind. But he did not do what he was trained to do, and didn't stop when he should have stopped, and didn't render aid when he should have rendered aid. So the training isn't an issue. The training is fine. The reform needs to be in the mindset, I think, of law enforcement. And we'll get into whether or not you really want to join this career field or not. And I think this has a lot to do with it. And it's the younger people coming in that are going to be able to affect change. So the reform needs to be things like, yes, there needs to be continued training. Well, there's already continued training. Well, then maybe we need to stress a little bit more about, the handling of people. Like, I know after, I can't remember what the case was, they were worried about positional asphyxiation. So they made sure we quit hog tying people, where you tie their feet and their hands together, and then lay them on their belly in your back seat until you get them to jail. That can be deadly depending on, the person's size, if they're on any kind of drugs or if they've been drinking. Anyway, so we quit doing that. We came up with a new way to hobble them, what we call hobble. You tie their feet together and you run the strap through the back door, through the front door, and hook it into your seat belt so they can't move their feet around. And that's how you restrain a combative person. So that is a way, it's sort of like a reform, right? So they figured out that positional asphyxia was a bad thing when we hog-tied people and put them on their chest. So now we sit them up, buckle them in, tie their feet together, and strap them in through the doors. And then that way they can't kick the windows out. They can't, they can't squeeze their, they can't slip their cuffs. They can't jump out the window. They can't do that kind of thing. So that's how we address that kind of a situation. What are the problems that we're having, and then how do we fix them? It's not trying to, change an entire methodology. But okay, I digress. Let's keep moving. So getting into this career field now, the way to get into it is not going to change. The big departments, like these big city departments, have a very stringent hiring process. Application. Then you've got to take a written test. Then you've got to take a polygraph, a physical fitness test, a psychological test. Then you have to do an interview. And then they do a background investigation on you. And they go talk to your neighbors and your high school friends and your college friends and your whoever friends and all these different people to get an idea of who you are. What kind of person are you? How are you going to react, right? So that system is already there. You can't change that. That's not going to change. You can't enhance that anymore. I can't think of anything you could possibly do to try to weed somebody out that the system isn't already there. Now, what you can do is have a continued monitoring system. I believe, and it's been shown, like 13 to 15% of all law enforcement have PTSD. And they believe that there is like another 10 to 15% that have symptoms that aren't reported. I personally believe it's a lot higher than that. There's no way that you can do what a law enforcement officer does on a daily basis, see the things that you see, and experience those things on a regular basis. A regular basis. When you go to work as a law enforcement officer, you are going to see things that the average citizen doesn't even know exist, or they hear about it on a news story, but they never see it. 7 family members found dead in a house. Father apparently, murder-suicide. Well, they hear about it and it's like, oh, that's terrible. But you have to go. You have to be in there. You see that 3-year-old with the bullet in the head and the 7-year-old with 3 bullets in the chest. You have to go in there and see all those things. And if you don't think that's not going to affect your brain with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, or post-traumatic stress damage, you're mistaken. I don't care what you do to prep yourself or what kind of dark humor you use to get yourself through, it will have an effect on your brain. So with those kind of things happening practically every day throughout your career, over time, do you or do you not think that it's possible that after 5, 10, 15 years, after dealing with all of that you may not run into a situation one day where you kind of snap and you break away from your training and maybe do something that you really shouldn't ought to do? Doesn't excuse any actions taken by any law enforcement officer anywhere. However, I do blame the system in not acknowledging that PTSD in law enforcement officers is a very real thing and is something that needs to be dealt with on a regular basis. There should be some kind of a crisis intervention after every major call. If you have that homicide suicide with the 7 family members in a house, you have a suicide where a guy put a shotgun in his mouth. And it doesn't have to be anything super in depth, but you need to give the officers a chance to talk it out. They got to be able to get it out. Oh, no, I'm fine. No. Come here, Joe. You and I are sitting down. We're talking about this. No, really, I'm fine. It's not a big deal. Nope. We got to talk. Give them a chance to let it out, to talk about it. What did they see? How did it make them feel? Get with them a few days later. Hey, Joe, man, talked about that suicide with the shotgun thing, man. How you doing? You think about it? Pictures ever enter your mind? You know, these are all things that have to do with the PTSD. And after being exposed to that for so long over a career, that is going to make you make bad decisions. That's why law enforcement officers end up having drinking problems. That's why they end up having marriage problems. That's why they end up doing things that they weren't trained to do. So you've got to keep that in mind. You want law enforcement reform? Help them. Help the law enforcement officers. If you're getting into the career field, or if you're already in the career field and you're seeing this, think about it. You tell me if I'm wrong. I'll guarantee you that you know somebody that's been in the profession that could use some help. You notice that they've picked up their drinking. You've noticed that they're on their second divorce, or they're going through a really bad divorce now. Tell me that you don't know somebody going through this. You need to get help, right? Law enforcement officers need some assistance. They are not superheroes. We are not supermen, men of steel, flying around their jurisdiction, solving crime and saving people, and nothing affects us. We have hearts. We have human brains, just like every citizen that we protect. And it gets affected by what we do. And anybody that says that it doesn't affect them, they're not admitting it to themselves. I'm telling you. So you can get into this career field. We need you to get in this career field, and we need you to make a difference. So reform is help. Officers need help on a regular basis. Nobody's been willing to acknowledge this. Nobody has bothered to try to get them the help that they need, but I'm telling you, they need regular help. That reform by itself would not only help each individual officer from making mistakes, but it will also go a long way in helping to ensure that they don't let their other fellow officers make mistakes. That's reform. So how are you going to get into this career field now with everything that's going on? The same way you would if it wasn't going on at all. This will all pass. Everything that we're going through right now, the riots and the protests and everything else, it'll all pass. It passed right after Rodney King. It passed right after Ferguson. It will pass after this. Law enforcement will start to build back up, and eventually something else will happen, and it'll start all over again. But if we can start making a difference with the officers that are working the street, that should be able to help solve some of these problems. So, you want to get into law enforcement during all this? Apply, please. We need you. I need you out there. I'm not doing the job anymore, but I need you out there to protect myself and to protect my family. I'll take care of me at the house, but when it comes to keeping the bad guys off the street, I need you out there helping me out. Please. So please apply. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll be more than happy to help you through the process. I'll answer any other questions that you might have about applying for law enforcement or going through the process, going through the academy, anything like that. Quick shout out, a buddy of mine that I used to work with just graduated from Police Academy in Northern Virginia. So shout out to you, Mr. Keating. You know who you are. So that's it for today. So thanks for watching In Pursuit 360. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button down below somewhere over here, I think. Maybe over here. Hit the bell notification. You'll find out when my next video is coming out. Hopefully it won't be as big of a gap as this one was. And give me the thumbs up, the like button. Leave some comments down below. Let me know what else you want to see. Let me know if you have any comments about this video. And y'all be safe out there.